Kohelet, we recently began a new chapter, Perek Zayin, and we're holding Pasuk Yud. Al tomar me haya shayamim harishonim hayu tovim me'ele, ki lo mechokhma sha'alta al zeh. There's a common saying, a common expression that people sometimes say, remember the good old days? That's a common in English. I'm sure they have it in other languages too, where people like to reminisce and to remember better times before. So very similarly, he's saying here, don't ever say that. Don't ever assume that things were better in the past. Or, what do you mean they were better? Of course they were. Some things were better in the past. But he's saying, don't complain about it. He says, don't try to figure out why certain things were better. Al tomar mehaya. What has happened? Shahayamim harishonim hayu tovim me'ele. That they were better. Ki lo mechokhma sha'alta al zeh. Because this kind of a question is totally irrelevant. It's not a smart question. Why are the days in the past better than today? How come times are not as good as they were in the past? What's wrong with asking that kind of a question? What is it? I mean, it's only fair to say that things appear to have been better in the past, at least certain things. So what's wrong? Many times that we will see throughout Kohelet, and we've seen a little bit already, that things are controlled from above. Things don't happen haphazardly, just b'mikre. There's ashgacha, there's definitely supervision from above, number one. Number two, there's something called Mazal, which is also a form of structure and program that Hashem puts an individual in from the time of birth. So things don't just happen randomly. And if something was better in the past for an individual, or for a nation, or for the world, then obviously people were better. Obviously the ma'asim, the deeds, were better. They had more zechuyot. If you look at Tanakh, if you learn Tanakh, the history of the Jewish people, up until the destruction of the first temple, you will notice that during the period of the Shoftim, the judges, and later, there's a lot of strife, war, battles, problems, hunger. And from time to time you read, Vatishkot ha'aretz 40 shana. And the land was quiet for 40 years. Occasionally you will see that. But otherwise, there's war with this neighbor. There's war with that neighbor. There's internal problems, internal politics, almost civil war. Issues, all kinds of problems. No rain for 3 years. You know what that means? No rain for, here if there's no rain for 6 months, it's already terrible. And in Israel today too, if there's not enough rain, it's a big problem. And we're talking about 3 years in a row. Death, disease, the economy is in shambles. So what does all this mean? Obviously, it means that people are not conducting themselves properly. And that is Hashem's way of communicating to us that something is wrong. The Jewish nation, we're told, has a special connection, a special kesher, special hashgacha on them, hashgacha pratit. So we feel it much more than the rest of the world. The rest of the world, therefore, can be doing all kinds of things that are wrong, and nothing happens to them. You would expect an earthquake, a monsoon, a tornado, and a hurricane, all one after another, for all what they do. And once in a while these things happen. They don't happen as often. So the hashgacha on us is very different than the hashgacha on the non-Jewish world. By us it's almost immediate. The effect is felt right away. By Am Yisrael, by individuals it's not like that. By individuals, and I explained that in a lecture about the crisis in Israel, in Bechukotai Telechu, right? The parasha discusses things that happen to the Jewish nation, prosperity or the lack of it, warfare or the opposite, peace, right? And rain or lack of it will depend on fulfillment, observance of the mitzvot. This is the system of the nation. The system of the nation is pretty much structured in such a way that if we do something wrong, it's offline, we feel it and we know about it almost immediately. Especially today that we don't have prophets to tell us. So how is it going to be told to us? We're going to find that out very, very quickly. Hashem cannot afford, does not want to, let us chas v'shalom completely disappear from the scene, like the rest of the nations of the world. So He has to remind us constantly there's something wrong. Whereas with individuals, it could be all kinds of reasons why Hashem does not remove him from this world. You know, a human being in some ways is an example. For others, he has great responsibilities. If he's not behaving himself, Hashem says, you know, maybe you don't belong here. You're just destructive instead of being constructive, instead of doing the right thing. Sometimes Hashem says you're better off not being here, and you're fired. You know, but sometimes that does not happen to an individual who's committed all the terrible sins. So why? Because his kids don't deserve to be orphans, and the wife does not deserve to be a widow. And Hashem's judgment is pure and correct, and He considers everything. So how could He take this man away when the kids and the wife will suffer? It's unfair. A judge down here doesn't care. The guy deserves 25 years behind bars. He's going to sit, even though the mother, the wife, the kids are going to suffer. What can the judge do? That's the law of the land. But Hashem, Atzur Tamim Paolo, Ichol Derachav Mishpat, El Emunah Ve'en Avel Tzaddik V'Yashar, who is completely just, He considers everything. This guy really deserves a lot of pain. How am I going to get it to him? I'm going to wait till he turns 69. When he's 69, the kids are out of the home, the wife won't feel it as much. I'm going to give it to him then. He's going to lose some money. He's going to have some pain in his feet. He's going to have some pain in his joints. All kinds of things that will form a kapara for him. I mean, ultimately, it's not a punishment. Every pain that we go through is some form of kapara. So, the system of individuals, the system of the nation, is two very different kinds of systems. So when we look around and see the situation as it is today, we say, what has happened? What do you mean, what has happened? Don't you realize that in the past there were great tzaddikim who may have been protectors of the generation, who in their merit, in the merit of the simple people, who were honest, hard-working people, that is why some things were better. Even though, unfortunately, in Europe, the Jews have suffered greatly, in Spain and Poland. Obviously, there was a reason for that. But as I said before, if you look at the Tanakh, occasionally you see Vatishkot ha'aretz 40 shana, there was peace for 40 years. Otherwise, there were many problems. Why were there problems? Because of the idol worshipping, because of other sins that were committed. So it's not right, he says, to ask such a question as to why certain times were better, how come today we're going through this recession, even though you can easily blame the politicians for it. It's very easy to do that. Obviously, they're borrowing from future generations. That's what they're doing, having such a big deficit. So you can argue with that too, but in reality there's other issues too. There are other issues that explain why the situation is the way it is today, how come things are more difficult than they have been in the past. So it's not a good thing to ask. It's not mechokhmah, because in the end, people are responsible for their actions. And there's a nice mashal in the Midrash, I think it is, of a young boy whose mother prepared him some dinner. She warmed it up for him. And he went out in the meantime to play with the kids in the backyard. Later on he comes back, and the food is cold, and he complains to his mother, "Mom, the food is cold." He says, "Yeah, because you went outside to play. When I prepared it for you, it was warm. Why are you blaming me? Blame yourself." Right? So the Torah, pretty much in other words, does the same. In other words, you're going to be blaming Hashem, you're going to be asking questions, blame yourself. It's easier and it's more correct to blame oneself than to start blaming HaKadosh Baruch Hu why are things the way they are. Obviously, there's something that we did not do right. And therefore, the message over here is when things do not work out for us as individuals, it's because some kilkul, something that we ruined. Not the time, not the place necessarily. Some people are going to blame, it must be the economy. it must be, some other problem. Yeah, it's a Chinese fault. That's right. Yeah, we forgot about them. It's the Chinese. They're taking over all the business. Yes, partially all of this is true. It's having an impact. You can't ignore that. But everyone has mazal anyway, good mazal. So if one has a good mazal, Hashem will put it into his mind. Listen, you used to do this kind of business all this time. Now you're going to have to adapt to something different to be able to, to manage during this time that things are being imported from other countries and you can't produce it. You used to manufacture it yourself. Now, so Hashem will put it into one's mind how to adjust, how to adapt to the times so that he should continue to survive. Well, just because the Chinese are taking over, does that mean that you don't have to survive? What are many Jews doing today? They're going to China. Yeah. It's full. I hear it's full. There's shuls and everything. It's growing. The Jewish community is growing there in various places. And so a Jew was always a wandering Jew. And, he always looked for parnasah, no matter where that took him. And many Jews went from Iraq to Iran. They moved there for business purposes. That's all it was, business. And from Iran they didn't stop. They went on to India some, and to Burma, and to all the other countries in the Far East. So when things do not go right, one should look around and say to himself, maybe the problem is with him, not necessarily with the location where he is. And the reason for that, the reason why that's the better way of thinking is because Anhagat Hashem, the way Hashem conducts himself in the world, does not really change. Hashem conducts his world with justice and with mercy, and he doesn't really change. Weather can change. Even though weather patterns follow certain rules, weather can change because of all kinds of components that make up the weather. You sometimes fly a plane, you sometimes will feel turbulence, and sometimes not. That can change. But Hashem does not change. What does change and prompts Hashem's Hanhagat to change are the ma'asim, the deeds of people. And it could easily happen that a person was wealthy for 25 years, very wealthy. He owned the whole block. And 25 years later, he lost everything. I'm sure you know at least one person like that, maybe. I'm not talking about people that lost some, people that almost lost everything. Yeah. In Hebrew, there's an expression, Hagalgal hitapech alav. The wheel, turned around on him. He was on top, and now he's on the bottom. But the good news is that he can come back on top again. That has happened too. We'll talk about it later on, maybe. An example of somebody who was in the bottom came back on top. Everything can happen. But trying to figure it out, we are limited. We have to remember this. We are limited in trying to figure everything out. We are told to first examine our deeds, but to figure it out completely, we don't know. All right, next pasuk. Tova chokhma im nachala v'yoter lero'eh hashamesh. Very interesting pasuk. As much as he emphasizes the importance of chokhmah, of wisdom, of knowledge, of learning, I'm reminded, I gave a shiur last night to Israeli-speaking public. Many of them are not very observant, many of them are not that strong in emunah, and but Baruch Hashem, they're learning. So I mentioned a little bit about Techiyat HaMetim, that the dead will soon rise, and one lady tells me, you say it with such confidence, like it's for sure going to happen. I said, yeah, of course. I mean, what's the big deal? I said, did you ever plant a fruit tree in your yard? Did you ever take a seed, nectarine, mishmish, mishmish, apricot, or whatever? Did you ever put it, and start the tree from scratch? She says, yes. I knew who to ask because I figured she had. And he said, what happened? She said, it started growing. He says, what did you do? You took a seed, it rotted in the ground. It rots before it actually sprouts up a new tree with new fruit. And it's incredible. But you're used to that, and you're not used to dead people coming out of the ground. So that seems like impossible. But it's the same kind of an idea. This one will be a miracle because it hasn't happened yet. And when we say Yitgadal v'Yitkadash Shmei Rabbah, we're talking about Chiyat HaMetim because that's when his name will be sanctified. And that's what we say it for a person who departed this world because that's part of our emunah in the survival of the soul. The soul continues to survive, even though the body decomposes. And the body too will rise, which is part of our emunah in Chiyat HaMetim. So somebody got up and asked, Rabbi, did this ever happen before? I says, yes, in 3 stages. Stage number 1 that it has happened with Eliyahu Navi and Elisha, where the child died for a number of hours, and he was able to bring back the child to life, right? You've heard the story. Then there have been near-death experiences where a person has died for a couple hours, maybe even a few minutes, and he saw himself out of his body and he came back. But these are only near-death experiences. So somebody asked me, well, what about somebody that was actually buried in the ground and was, dead and came back? I said, yes, the Valley of Bones, Chazon Atzamot HaYeveshot, from Yechezkel. Right? The vision that Yechezkel saw and that he saw in actuality, where an entire valley of bones, of skeletons rose. This has happened once, but people forgot about it, obviously, because it happened so long ago. Over 2,000 years ago. 2,500 years ago, yeah. So because it doesn't happen, people don't understand how could this be. That's part of our emunah. So, yes, we say it with confidence because to us it's clear, we learned about it, and we understand it. It's not a big deal, it can happen, Hashem is capable of doing anything. So once you learn about Hashem's Hanhaga in our limited wisdom, with our limited mind, things make sense a little bit more. But for those who don't know, obviously, you sound so confident, she says. So he said now, as much as we value Chokhmah, look what he says over here. This is one of the first times actually that he talks about some value of money. Tova Chokhmah im Nachala. Now, as we've seen before, in various Pesukim, every Pesuk may have more than one Pirush, more than one interpretation, more than one commentary. Some of the words are difficult to understand, and without the commentaries we would be lost. What does it mean, Tova Chokhmah im Nachala? Literally translated, that means Chokhmah is good with inheritance. That's what Nachala means. So what does it have to do with Chokhmah? So one interpretation is that Shlomo Melech is telling us something similar to what is said in Pirkei Avot. Yafet Torah im derech eretz. It is good if a person can have both Torah and a profession. Derech eretz also means good character and good nature, but derech eretz also means a profession. She'yigiat shnehem mashkachat avon, Rabbi says. If you're involved in learning and you're busy working, you won't have time to sin. It's not only the lack of time to sin, having a profession, having a source of income is very valuable because you don't have to beg people to support you. It's not a good thing for a person to beg, even if he's a chacham, especially if he's a chacham. So he says here, one pirush, Tova chokhmah im nachala, with some sort of inheritance, meaning with some sort of source of income, that he calls here nachala. Especially v'yoter lero'eh hashamesh, for those who see the sun. This is an expression, it's a poetic expression to ordinary human beings are the ones who see the sun. As opposed to who? As opposed to Talmidei Chachamim. Not that they don't see the sun, they're busy in the Bet Midrash. And because Talmidei Chachamim value Chokhmah, they don't care if you have no money. In other words, to them, the Chacham is a Chacham. But to everybody else in the world, if you want to be respected, especially to them, you want to have both. You want to have Tova Chokhmah im Nachala. Okay, so that's one pirush, that it's a good thing for a person, especially for Chacham, to have both. Now, another pirush would be, also makes sense over here, is that Tova Chokhmah im Nachala, that don't keep the Chokhmah for yourself. As the rabbis tell us in different words, Lamata Torah arbeh al tachzik tova le'atzmecha. Don't hold it for yourself. Give it over to others. Share your knowledge with others. There are people who are very overprotective of what is theirs, not only their possessions, but something that they They put a patent on it. I understand they don't want to be. It shouldn't be stolen. But they put something together. They don't want, let's take an example of a recipe of a chocolate chip cake, a good cheesecake. I'm sure you call up somebody who made the cake. Would you mind giving me the recipe? Of course not. How dare you ask me for the recipe? What's wrong with sharing a recipe? No, I worked so hard to develop it. I know it's my baby. It's whatever. All kinds of shtuyot, terutzim, excuses. Some people are very possessive or protective of that which is theirs that they came up with. Today you can go to the internet and get tons of recipes on anything you want. But some people feel, this is unique. It's a secret formula. Coca-Cola doesn't want to reveal. I understand a little bit. It's a problem with the business ethics. People will steal the business. Okay. So anyway, so Chokhmah is to be taught. Torah is to be taught. So Tovah Chokhmah im Nachala, much better. Another pirush of Nachala, of Tovah Chokhmah im Nachala, is that we're talking about giving over something to one's children. Even though you may want to give them money, you're going to be better off giving them chokhmah. Tovah chokhmah im nachala. When you're giving over the money, give them over also chokhmah, not just money. Because chokhmah will give him life, will give him olam haba. He will learn the ways of how to live, how to conduct himself. Teach your children, teach your students. Don't just give them a nachala of money. So Tovah Chokhmah im Nachala, especially with one's children, don't just give them the Nachala, give them along with the Nachala, give them Chokhmah. One who teaches others, that's called Torah Shel Chesed. He's being kind by sharing it with others. And what's Leroeh Shemesh? Leroeh Shemesh could also be talking about one's students, or it could be talking about things that are to be printed, books, because what you give over, hopefully it should stay behind and should have an impact. Should be seen for a long, long, long time after one is gone. So therefore, all of this giving over, this nachala, make sure that it's done in a way where it's v'yoter leroeh hashamesh, for those that will stay behind you. In other words, after you are gone. Another idea, perhaps, when if dealing with the kids and teaching them, one should teach them how to use the money that one is given to give them. Imagine a father leaving his son $1 million. That's a lot of money, even though today it's not as much. It still is. What are you going to do with the money? It's like they ask people who just won the lottery, well, how do you plan to use your money? Some people don't know. Going to buy myself a car. Yeah, but you have a lot more. And that's why the people at the lottery, they do it smart. They give you a choice of taking it in installments, not in a lump sum. If you take it in installments, at least you don't get the chance to waste all your money on nonsense, right? To squander it in Vegas.
They're hoping you die before you can collect them.
Well, no, I think if you have an heir, it doesn't count.
No.
You sure?
And mathematically, it works out better for them in the period of time as opposed to...
Because money now is worth more than money down the road. Because of inflation and all that.
It's true.
Even if you're going to be paying more taxes now, it's better to take all the money now.
At one time.
Yeah, but are you sure that if you have children, it doesn't go to them? Why shouldn't it?
Because they signed the contract with you. It's not with your children.
Yeah, but it belongs to you. Whatever belongs to you belongs to the children.
That's the stipulation.
That's the stipulation.
If you want it all, take it now. If you want to take it over installments, then you have to go with this stipulation.
That's a stipulation? Really?
You can't.
Then it doesn't pay. Yeah. Hire somebody to manage your account. Yeah. All right. Anyway.
If you win the lottery, don't die.
Yeah. Anyway, so it would be a good thing for the father to teach his son, to instruct him how to make good use of his money, not just to leave him with the money. All right, next pasuk. כי בצל החוכמה בצל הכסף, בצל הכסף. ויתרון דעת החוכמה תחיה בעליה. Another pasuk that is a little bit difficult to follow because he's saying many things. כי בצל החוכמה, in the shadow of wisdom, in the shadow of money. And still, v'yitron da'at, knowledge still has an advantage over money. What is he talking about? Shadow of wisdom, shadow or shade of money. The shade, the tzel, gives protection from the hot weather. So whenever you see the word tzel is a form of protector. So chokhmah protects. It shows you the way, shows you the path. It acts as a light in helping us navigate life. That's what chokhmah is. Kesef too. Kesef acts in some ways as a shade too. It can protect, it can help. You can buy things with it, you can build with it. So he says, the two are in some ways equal because they both have shade. Ki betzel ha-chokhmah, betzel ha-kasef. There is some advantages to chokhmah, there's some advantages to money. And he's spoken about it before. He's talking about the value of money before, so that's why he continues with this idea that they both have some advantages. Still, I'm going to remind you, and he does that a lot in Mishlei, in his other book, Yitron Da'at. Don't forget that Da'at, nevertheless, between the two is the more important one. Why? Because Chokhmah techayeh be'alea. Because Chokhmah is what gives life to its owners, to those who learn it. Not money. There are people who have lots of money, but they're sick. The money does not give them life, does not make them happy. The Chokhmah gives them life. And it's not only talking about life in Olam Hazeh, it's talking about life in Olam Haba. So that's the advantage of Chokhmah, is that it's a lot more, it contributes a lot more to one than money. There's a famous story in the Midrash of a rabbi that was traveling by ship. And as you know, in those days, years ago, the ships were not as strong as they are today. If there was a little bit of a stormy sea, it would break down. The people were in danger of drowning. So there was a boat of businessmen, and on this boat the rabbi was traveling. So in the middle of the trip, the businessmen come over to the rabbi and ask him, so where is your merchandise? And he says, my merchandise is here. They thought he has a box, they don't want to see his merchandise. Mine is here. So they started making fun of him. His merchandise is here. What kind of merchandise is here? As soon as the seas became very, very stormy, the captain of the ship asked of each of the businessmen to start unloading the heavy boxes to make the ship a little bit lighter, to throw off the things. So of course they all began to throw out their merchandise, and they basically threw out everything they owned. He had, of course, nothing to throw out, and he just remained what he had, the way it was before. Anyway, Baruch Hashem, they made it safe to land. But the ones who were businessmen, once upon a time, were now barely with their clothes on, barely, and did not know what to do. How are they going to survive? How are they going to provide for themselves? The Chacham went to the Bet Midrash, started giving shurim, started helping the community. The people gave him respect, and they supported him and took care of him. And now all the businessmen, they saw that he was right. His chokhmah not only was a chokhmah here, it was also safe. It was also safe. This is the best safe. Nobody could touch it. Nobody could take it away. Their valuables, what could they do with their valuables? Right? It was worthless now. So now they had to go beg him to please speak to the community so they can get some help, so they can start again from scratch. True story. It happened, What good would all that money be if, eventually you have to part with it? The chokhmah is what gave him life. It's what made him survive more than the money. Perhaps I'll tell you another interesting story. We have a little bit of time. Okay. Also, I think, brought down the Midrash, a very fascinating story with Shlomo HaMelech himself. 3 brothers came to him. 3 young brothers came to him, and they spent 13 years by him. Their intention was to learn from him. And he says, listen, if you want to learn by me, you need to work. You need to do something for me. And after that, I will compensate you, either with money or with chokhmah. I will teach you. After 13 years, one brother tells the rest of them, let's go home. We've been away for so long. We didn't really accomplish that much over here. And let's take whatever's coming to us, and that's it. So they went over to Shlomo Melech. Shlomo Melech says, listen, you still have a choice. You want to be compensated with 300 gold coins, each one 100, or I will teach you Chokhmah, for all the work that you've done. And the brothers decided, let's just take the money. Let's just go, we've been away so long. So they left town, they took the money. On the way out of town, the younger one of them says, I don't think we did the right thing. I think I should go back. And after all, we came here to learn from him. We didn't come for the money. I'm going back to learn. So they told him, you're crazy. You want to go? Go. We're continuing on. All right. So he went back, and Shlomo Melech says, fine, here's, he gave back his money. I'll teach you 3 things. 3 things. What are the 3 things? Number 1, when you're on the road, make sure that you leave early in the morning, okay, when it's daylight, and that when you go to sleep early. In other words, you stop in a place when it's still light outside, when it's not dark. In other words, don't go to your final destination, don't try to stretch the day as much as possible to get ahead so much. Try to get to a hotel, get to a place to rest before the sun comes down. So start out daylight, end while it's still daylight, and don't travel at night. That's number 1. Number 2, when you come to a river that you see is full of water, how sometimes the rivers after a big rain, it's full of running water, wait. Before you cross it, wait till the water subsides a little bit, and then cross it. Don't cross it when it is full. Number 2. Number 3, if you have a very important secret, don't share it with anybody, not even with your own wife. Those were the 3 pieces of information he gave him. After he taught him that, he says, now you can go. Okay, that was worth 300 gold. He was able to catch up with his brothers. And the brother says, so what did you learn already? In such a short time. He says, what do you care? I learned what I learned. Anyway, as they were going, it was becoming dark. He says, I'm staying behind. You're a fool. Why are you staying behind? We still have a long way to go, and if we travel a couple more hours, we'll be another few miles ahead. He says, I'm staying put. I'm staying where I am. So he stayed, and he took care of his animals, his horses, whatever. He built a little hut for himself and for the animal, and he went to sleep. They continued on, and because it was becoming nighttime, it began to snow. It was very cold. They were unprepared, and they died. The 2 brothers died in the cold of the snow of the night, wherever they were, because they were totally unprepared. This happens sometimes when people go on hikes, on high, tall mountains, and they're not prepared for the weather there. The weather down below can be very different than the weather up in the mountain. You can have storms. You can have what they call floods in areas of the desert. What are they called? Flash floods. So even with your car, you can be in danger. You have to be very careful. You have to listen to the news. So obviously they didn't realize these things, and that's why they lost their life. They traveled at night. All of a sudden they were hit with a big storm. Next morning he got up and continued, and he found his brothers. He felt terrible. They were his brothers. He cried. He took whatever money they had with them, and he buried them. All right. Next, he continues on his travel. All of a sudden, he comes to a river, and he sees that the river is full. So he stops. As he's resting and waiting, he sees some soldiers of Shlomo Melech coming to cross the river, and he tells them, these are soldiers that have lots of money with them, and they're going somewhere. And he tells them, wait. He says, why should we wait? Don't you see? We have to go where we're going. He says, it's not a good thing for you to go now. Wait. They didn't listen to him. They went into the waters and they drowned. So he took their money too. Yeah, so far he's accumulating some money too in the process. Anyway, so finally he gets to his final destination. He gets home. And what does he do with all the money? He buys properties, he starts planting vineyards, and he becomes a very wealthy, successful man. The wives of the other brothers, asked him, what happened? He says, I'm sorry, I just can't tell you. Something happened, they got killed, they died, whatever. But I can't get into the details. His wife started asking him. She says, don't bother me. He said, I'm not going to tell you. So he didn't tell her. One day, she was just pressing hard. She was just trying to squeeze him for information. How did you make this money so quickly? Where did it come from? And he just couldn't take it. She was giving him such a hard time, and he told her, okay, this is what happened. He told her all the details of how they died, and this, how he took all the money. One day he made her very upset. He made his wife very, very upset. And because he made her very upset, she yelled at him, are you trying to kill me the same way you killed your brothers? And the wives of the brothers overheard what had happened, and the word got out, the story, the details. So they started blaming him for everything, and they went to tell the king that he was dishonest. He stole the money. So he had Mazal that it was Shlomo Melech was still the king, and he told the king, "King, don't you remember me? I was the one that stayed behind, that wanted to learn from you, or you the one that told me this. But I felt the first two I kept, but the third thing that you taught me, I just was too weak. I couldn't resist the pressure of my wife, and I told her." He says, "I'll let you go." He says he's saying the truth. I'm the one that gave him that advice. And we see, of course, from the story how the chokhmah in life, the wisdom of the sages, the wisdom of the Torah, has helped a lot of people in all kinds of situations. I'll tell you a quick story in the Gemara. The rabbis, for example, tell us, what do you do if you have thieves that are coming behind your back? You're on the road, and you see that they want to overtake you. They're not going to do it at any point. They're going to do it whenever there are no people, whenever they think it's good for them. They're not just going to do it right away, right? So, but what are you supposed to do? So the Chachamim tell us there's various advice, various ways of how to deal with these kind of situations. Obviously, you want to avoid them. You don't want to travel by yourself. But anyway, you're by yourself. So if they ever ask you where you're headed, this may, by the way, happen to you here. Somebody may ask you for directions, and he really wants to steal from you, but he wants to start a conversation. So one has to be very, very careful with people approaching the car. Depending on the hour of the day, of course, if you're by yourself, it could be that they want to take something from you. That's why they're stopping the car. It has happened with jewelers. They punch the flat tire. Oh, you want some help? So you leave the door open, they take your suitcase. Okay, they know all the tricks. So the Chachamim had to be smarter than the tricksters. So if the thieves ever ask you where you're going, give them as a destination a place that is 50 miles beyond where you're going. So let's say you want to get off at the La Brea exit, because you're coming from Orange County. You're going to get off at La Brea, right? And people ask you, where are you getting off? Tell them I'm getting off at Pacific Coast Highway. Right? And that's what happened over here. The rabbi told the thief, I'm going all the way there. And as soon as he came to La Brea, he went off. And they were caught off guard. Now they couldn't do anything to him because he was already close to people. But when they met up with him, they said, you're a liar. But he says, no, this is not lying. This is chokhmah, on how to deal with you bunch of thieves. Because that's what you wanted to do. So the rabbis already anticipated what you're planning to do. So they gave us advice. Push it off. Was tell them, this kind of a, make this kind of a remark that you're going beyond where you're really going, so you can get away from them. That's all. This is chokhmah, examples of chokhmah. Anyway, before we go on, just a couple more points about the difference between Chokhmah and Kesef. He tells us how valuable Chokhmah is. The rabbis in the commentaries make mention here that look at what's going on in the real world. The real world, people take their money and they use it to build all kinds of beautiful shuls, marble, gold-plated. They're monuments. That's all they are. You know, whereas so much of that money could have been used to save Jewish children from public schools, saving them from assimilating, saving them from intermarriage. Wouldn't that have been better use for that money? Who needs such a grand palace? Even though if it's L'Shem Shamayim, it's different, of course. But still, there are priorities. And priority number one is to save the kids. You know that you're allowed to sell a Sefer Torah? Very rarely you sell a Sefer Torah. It's very rarely. How are you going to sell a Sefer Torah? But to save a Jew, Pidyon Shvuim, to save a Jew from this prison where he's going to languish, where he's going to die, it's a big mitzvah. You can even sell the Sefer Torah to get the money to release him, if you need it. If there's no other way. Usually there may be other way to collect the money. But if there's no other way, you can even do that. To put all the money into a big structure for what? Just to show off? It's wrong. What a shame. So there's a tremendous greater advantage to Chokhmah. In other words, not only the Chokhmah in learning it, but in using it right, in investing in it. Somebody wanted to ask something? Yeah. Another idea behind this Chashivut HaChokhmah is the support of Talmidei Chachamim, the support of yeshivot and kolelim, supporting of Torah institutions is a big mitzvah because the rabbis tell us whoever does so, he becomes a partner to that Torah that is being learned there. So it's a tremendous benefit for him in this world and in the world to come, that he has become a partner. He will be upstairs together with the Talmidei Chachamim that he supported, that he enabled them to learn. He will be together with them even though he was a simple businessman. But because he supported Torah, he supported Talmidei Chachamim, he has a share of their Torah. He therefore gets the credit for doing that. It's a tremendous idea, tremendous concept that people are not aware enough of it. And that is called, in other terms, the relationship of Zevulun and Yisachar and Zevulun. Were two brothers where Yisachar was learning in Torah and Zevulun was a merchant in the ships, with the ships, the boats. He supported. He says, you learn, I work. But you give me half of what you learned to me, to my credit. And I will support you. That business relationship, or that kind of a kesher, is permissible in halakha. And it is done from time to time too. That people do not have that much time to learn. They don't have the head for it. But they care for someone, they value his Torah, they support him. So obviously this is not just for anyone, because it has to be somebody who really is of a caliber that will be learning seriously, not just smoking cigarettes for half the time. I just read an article on the internet that the laziest country in the world is Iran.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's why you're not. Yeah, but you're not there anymore. Now, why? How did they determine that they're the laziest? How did they figure that they're the laziest? They figured out how much time they work from 8 to 5. And they found that in a day of 8 to 5 work, they only worked 1 hour and 14 minutes. What was done the other times?
Smoking.
Tea.
Chai.
Tea, smoke, telephones. Could you believe that?
Wow.
How much tea can you drink?
A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Tea, cigarettes, telephone calls. 1 hour and 14 minutes in Iran.
Should move back.
Yeah. Other countries, Saudi Arabia, I think was 2 hours or 1 hour and a half. Mostly the Middle East, Asia. Yeah. And I forget which country was the most. I think the Japanese are the hardest working ones. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, that was an incredible thing. I didn't realize that it was only 1 hour. Now I understand why in Israel they have a very popular profession. It's called 804. 804. You come at 8, you do 0, and you leave at 4. That's it. 8-0. It's very popular because there's a coffee break every half an hour. Also, it's terrible because it means that the country's not productive. That's incredible. In other words, it's not just an attitude. It's not just a way of life. It actually means the country is going to be lagging behind. If everybody or the majority of people are like that, nothing will be done. Anyway, it's interesting. Next pasuk. Re'et ma'aseh Elohim ki mi yuchal letaken et asher iveto. Very important pasuk. Analyze the workings of Hashem, His creation. Who can repair what Hashem has done? What does that mean? So there's various pirushim here. Yonatan ben Uziel takes a completely different approach, and I'd like to mention it because it's very interesting what he says. He says, look at the Maaseh Elohim. Sometimes you will see people who are born blind, cripple, and hunchback. There was all kinds of physical disabilities. He says, can anybody fix them? Have you ever seen any of them fixed? He says, some things are beyond repair. Why is he telling us that? Based on that interpretation, he says there are certain things that we cannot fix. You cannot cry about them. There's a Mazal, there's a decree from heaven, this is how things should be, and it's not always possible to change. Only Hashem, of course, could change it. Therefore, don't be in so much wonder as why are things the way they are. Things have been decreed that they should be so by Hashem. And some things need to be that way because they can't be repaired. If they would be able to be repaired, Hashem would allow us to repair them. That's what the Brit Milah is, right? Brit Milah means that there's something unfinished in the human body because there's something that we can perfect. We take wheat and we perfect it into bread. The process that wheat goes through until it's refined and becomes edible, it's incredible. That is man's job, is to perfect himself, to perfect the world, that which is possible to perfect. But there's a lot of things that are beyond our hands, our control. Don't cry about it, don't complain about it. Another pirush, an important pirush on this pasuk, is look at the ways of the Boreh, look at the ways of the Maasim of Hashem, look how everything is organized, everything is beautiful, everything is designed, everything is in order. Everything in its place. 2 eyes, everything is symmetrical. But look, if you look at creation, did you ever look at a flower up close? The tulip, the rose, everything's so beautiful. There's design. Everything in the human body, in creation, look at the Maaseh Elohim. And therefore, you will see that there are various ways that you can go in doing the right or doing the wrong. Because Hashem has prepared both possibilities. And by analyzing the world, by analyzing the ways of Hashem, make up your mind. Choose what you want for yourself. Hashem has prepared the reward for those who do the right, and He has prepared Gehenom for those who do the wrong. In other words, by analyzing the creation, by seeing how everything is so beautifully designed and organized, you should be able to make up your mind. You should be able to make a good choice as what is proper and what you should do.
You have choice?
Yeah, we have free will when it comes to mitzvot only, not when it comes to making money. Because making money is all qismat.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. It's set, you can't change that usually.
How about the marriage or something else?
Marriage also, you don't always have a choice.
So,
Unless you pushed off your mazal, you didn't want to get married, right? You were very picky. You say, I only want an Isfahani girl. Only from there, not Shiraz. If you're so picky and you want only one thing in particular and you don't see, then of course, they say the women from Isfahan are the nicest ones. That's why I said Isfahan. They said, don't take the men from Isfahan, just the men. just the women. Except for So, if you're picky, very picky, I want this, she has to be this high, she has to have money, then obviously you may lose your chance of finding your hamnafas. right? Your soulmate, the one that's for you, that Hashem only knows. Yeah, you're picky, right?
Who create you to be picky?
No, that's your nature.
Means-
People have a nature, khususiyat.
How do
You have a characteristic.
How
What?
do you get it?
From the mazal. You're born in a certain mazal, and you have a mazal that is chasis. You know that? Yeah, yeah. You have
It's
a
not your fault. It's not.
no, it is because you can work on it. You can control it. Yeah, right. You have a mazal that's chesh tongue. You have all kind. That's the type of person he is. Yeah, you know people like that.
Oh, many.
I think next is speech version. Huh?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, that's how it is. And then of course you have the maghrur. Yeah. You know people like that too?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also all from the mazal. People who, they have to work on themselves. So that's choice. Even though you have certain weaknesses and inclinations, you have a choice of if you want to be like that or you want to change. You want to control your anger or you want to just be, wild, like a wild animal. So analyze the ways of Hashem, decide how you want to be, and decide quickly, because after one's death, there's no chance letaken et asher iveto, that which we've made crooked, that which we've made corrupted, that which we've ruined, we cannot fix. Kimi yuchal letaken et asher iveto could be talking about himself too, that all the mistakes that he has made, it may be too late later on to fix. The main point, however, that he's trying to tell us here is that when you look at life, you will look and focus and concentrate only on the general hanhaga of Hashem, the general way Hashem runs the show. Don't try to figure out every detail. How come he has more money? How come he has a bigger house? How come he has more kids? How come it's not fair? How come he lost? How come he didn't live as long? Don't try to analyze or figure out the small details in creation. We can't. You will see the hanhaga, you will see the hashgacha, you will see Hashem's supervision, you will see the design, and learn from that there is an order, there is a cheshbon, there is reasons for everything. But to try to figure out why apples are red and not under a different color, how do we know? We can explain it through physics, because the apple reflects the red color. Certain things reflect a color, because you have all the colors in the prism, all the colors, that you can see through a prism are in creation. But certain things reflect one color more than another. That is why this is yellow and this is red. It's the material, whatever it is made out of, is reflecting the red more than any other color. But try to figure out, we don't know. And we can't concentrate and waste our time trying to understand everything. So even though we may see things that don't make sense, don't think it's a mikre. Never think that it's a mikre, because it's all Maaseh Elokim. So he says, analyze the Maaseh Elokim, look at them, and you will see how everything has a certain purpose, everything has order and design. Now, before we go on to the next point, let's say something is wrong, and we don't understand why. Let's say a person is suffering, there's a lot of Yisurim. Just remember that it's kaparat avonot. Every kind of Yisurim is always an atonement. And there's a nice mashal, the commentaries bring down, maybe it's in the Midrash, of a child that ate, what are those grapes that are not ripe yet called in Farsi? Ure, right? From the ure, I don't think you're going to get a stomachache. But from some fruits that are not ripe, you can get a stomachache. So there was a child that got a stomachache from eating something that was not ripe. The doctor came and prescribed medication for him, or what to take, but the medication was very bitter. Daddy tells his father, give this to my friend, I don't want to take it. He says, how are you going to get better if your friend takes this? You are the one that's sick. You are the one that has to take the medication. By other people taking it, you're not going to get cured. So the commentators explain that's the idea over here too. If something is wrong, then first examine yourself before trying to blame it on him, before trying to blame it on others. The first thing to always examine oneself, and if it could be that this is the medication that Hashem has sent him to cure him, the kapara. We don't know, but we do know that it's not a coincidence. There's no mikre, and that every yisurim is kapara. Sometimes we think that we can fix the situation in the world, we can repair it. We only make it worse sometimes, because Hashem wants it to be a certain way. And there's a story in the Midrash actually that's very similar to this idea of a big rabbi who was going on the beach, and he saw a sharp object sticking out from the sand. I think it was a bone of an animal, or a skull, or something that was very, very sharp. And he says, this is dangerous, somebody can trip over it and get killed, get hurt. So he dug the hole and put it inside. He walks away and it comes back up. Wow. So he dug a bigger hole and placed it again and covered it with sand. It popped out. He says, this is min hashamayim. Obviously min hashamayim, they want this sharp object, like glass or whatever, to be in this spot. A couple weeks or months later, he heard that a messenger from Rome has arrived from Rome with a terrible decree against the Jews. He was walking by the beach, he fell, he tripped over that, got killed. And the whole decree, of course, was cancelled. It never was delivered. So now he remembered. You see, that thing needed to be there. We sometimes think that we can fix and repair it. Hashem sometimes does certain things, and obviously because of the way He wants it. We cannot repair it, we cannot change it or fix it. Okay, let's just see one more pasuk. B'yom tova hiye betov, b'yom ra'a ra'eh. In Arabic, there's a saying, Yom asal wa yom basal. There are some days that are like honey, and some days that are like onion. You ask people, some days we have ups and downs. Some days are honey, good and sweet, and some days are like onion. Cute saying. So he's saying something similar to this. B'yom tova hiye betov. In a good day, be good. B'yom ra'a ra'eh. In a bad day, see. What should I see? This is a very interesting pasuk because it's a little longer than the average, and it's saying all kinds of things. Let me first translate it. So b'yom tova hayeh betov, be good in a good day. B'yom ra'a ra'eh, on a bad day you should see, observe. Gam et ze l'umat ze asa Elohim. Hashem has made things that correspond to other things. Al divrat shelo yimtza adam acharav me'umah, on account of that a man should not or will not find after him anything. If you just read it, you won't be able to make sense of it. So this is what he says. B'yom tova hayeh betov. So long as the day is good, life is good to you, take advantage and use that good for a good purpose. Because the time that good is in your hands may not last forever. So one Pirush says like this, B'yom tova hayeh betov. Take advantage of it, manage it well, use it right. This could also be including people who don't use their money. They want to save it. They don't live. By the time they're ready to retire, they've died. Or the money was taken away from them. Enjoy life while you can. Obviously, don't overdo it. Don't exaggerate. Okay, so b'yom tova hiye betov. Be good. Make good use of your money. U'b'yom ra'ah, in a bad day, re'eh. Look at what? Examine your deeds. Try to figure out if you can why things are the way they are. Maybe there's something you can do. That's one pirush. In other words, he's telling us that it's important to observe, to look at things, because in the end, re'eh, if you observe, you will see gam et ze le'umat ze asa Elohim. You will see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made things in an equal, balanced way. What does that mean? It means two things. Number one, every good has bad, every bad has good. For example, people have kids. He's so lucky he has kids. Do you know that he also has tsar gidul banim? He has the pain of raising the kids, the tuition to pay. Whereas the one who doesn't have the kids doesn't have this problem. So here he has something good, but he has something bad, if we can call it bad. He has something bad he doesn't have, but he doesn't have the other problems. Okay, then you have the person who has lots of money. He has lots of money, but he has lots of troubles. People who are jealous of him, people who want his money, people who are calling him up and giving him a hard time. Then you have the other guy who doesn't have that much money, but he has tranquility, peace of mind, quiet, nobody bothers him, nobody cares about because he has something. You see? So you have zelu matzeh. In every good there's something, a disadvantage, like they say in English, pros and cons. And in every con there's also pro. That's one pirush. The second pirush, zelu matzeh, is talking about midah keneged midah. Hashem did us a favor. When He sends a kapara, He sends it in a way that we should be able, some of the time at least, to figure out what it has to do with. Because He makes the pur'anut, the pain, He makes it resemble the sin. So that's why the rabbis tell us if somebody really has tremendous pain in a certain area of his body, it could be, Kabbalistic we know for sure it is, that is related to something that he may have done or that is associated with that part of his body. The reason why it's a little complex is because sometimes it has to do with the previous Gilgul, the previous reincarnation. That is why we won't always know for sure. But we're still told to check. We're still told to check, and if we check, we may be able to find the reason and correct it. So that's Zelu Matzeh. Another Pirush on Zelu Matzeh is that Hashem has made, or does things midah keneged midah. And the reason why He does this, al divrat, as we said, shelo yimtza adam acharav me'umah, that a person should, one Pirush means that a person should not be able to complain to Hashem. Shelo yimtza adam acharav me'umah, you should not be able to complain, why are things like that? So Hashem says, I did it midah keneged midah. It's a kapara for you. You should be able to figure it out. Because ultimately, it's always, as Yonatan ben Uziel points out very nicely in this pasuk, after a person receives all the pain in this world, he comes upstairs, he's clean. Or he thinks, who knows what they're going to do to him. So don't worry about it. You've already paid for most of your problems of chataim in this world. You only have a little bit left. I wish I would have had more pain. The Chafetz Chaim says, if we only knew how much the pain does good for us here, we would ask for double. On the other hand, Rabbi Yochanan, I think, was the one that said, Lo midufshech ve'lo mikusech. I'd rather not have your honey, not have your sting. You know, the bee, we get honey from it, but we also can get a sting. So Rabbi Yochanan says, I don't want the honey from the Yisurim, and I don't want the sting. In other words, I don't want the kapara, because to suffer is terrible. You know what chemotherapy does to people? Chas v'shalom. It's tremendous pain, but what can we do? You know, if Hashem decides that this is what the person needs, it's a kapara. We still have to pray, that through the zechut of prayer and mitzvot, that should take the place of the Yisurim. That should be a kapara. We should take it away. We have to try our best. But on the other hand, we have to examine ourselves and see in everything that happens a good side to it. And one last pirush on this pasuk also, the biyom tova heye betov biyom ra'a re'eh. Somebody that was poor became rich. Remember I spoke about it before, he's still rich. He was poor and became rich. So biyom tova heye betov, when you're Baruch Hashem, okay, successful, be happy, enjoy. But biyom ra'a re'eh, look back at the time that you were poor. You were a pauper. You had nothing. When do we do that? On Pesach we do this. Ashata b'nei chorin, we're free men. But remember, halachma anya, we were once poor. This is the bread of our forefathers. We should never go back to that, of course. So Shlomo Melech says, remember the bad too, because you never know, it may happen again. So don't get used to a very grandiose lifestyle, because you never know, you may have to go back. But enjoy, but remember the bad. Now, there was a story with a ro'eh, a shepherd that became king. Just like the mayor in Los Angeles, He was an ordinary citizen, very ordinary, very plain from the street. He became mayor of Los Angeles. So there was once a shepherd who became king. And this king, this shepherd turned king, had a secret room. A secret room that nobody knew what he had in this room. Everybody thought he must have treasures. He's a king. What does he have in a secret room that nobody can go into? So once some robbers succeeded in breaking into that room, and they were very disappointed. They found no, not a coffin. That's another story. They found a shepherd's hat in a stick. He would go into this room to remember that once upon a time he was a shepherd. You know, to remember that he was. That's what it means. Look back and reflect on those days that you had nothing. There are people like that they came to this country, they had nothing, right? And Baruch Hashem, today they're doing well, but once upon a time they had nothing. So remember that. And of course, last but not least, B'yom Tovah Heyeh B'tov, when you are doing well, Baruch Hashem, it's a Baracha Mishamayim, just remember, Heyeh B'tov. Use that money to be good and kind to others who are B'yom Ra'ah Re'eh. In other words, you are good, you have the finances, you have the means, B'yom Tovah Heyeh B'tov, but at the time that you're enjoying yourself, B'yom Ra'ah Re'eh, look at those who are B'yom Ra'ah. Look at those who are not doing so well and take pity over them. After all, Hashem has a reason why He made you rich and made them poor. There needs to be a balance. There needs to be a connection or an interdependence between the two of you, right? So therefore, think about this and therefore be helpful in your time of good. Be there for those people who need you. And there was a story in the Midrash of Rabbi Tamchum. Rabbi Tamchum had a minhag. Every single time he went to buy meat, which was not too often, buying meat for myself, a pound of meat, I bought a pound of meat for the poor. Whatever he bought something special for himself, he bought also the same for the poor man. So this is what Shlomo Melech is communicating to us, is that even though Baruch Hashem you have a beracha, is just remember to make good use of your beracha. And making good use of the beracha means obviously to share with those who don't have. Okay, we'll stop over here.